Wild hosting the Edmonton Oilers tonight, right here on the flagship FM 100.3, The Fan, Russo Radio, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Why are you on the phone?
Because 7:30 game, I didn't want to make Fallness come down a half hour earlier.
Anything that can inconvenience him is a good thing. That's what you got to get it out of your head.
I know.
Come on.
Plus, I've been under the weather lately, and the thought of smelling his candles just made me ill. So
yeah.
But yeah, 7:30 game. It's funny though because it's an ESPN reason. But then last night I was out with Steve Levy, and he looks at me and goes, "Why is tomorrow a 7:30 game?" I'm like, "Because of you." It can only be because of ESPN.
Yeah.
There's no reason the Wild would have a 7:30 home game. They never have 7:30 home games. So.
Questions for Russo, hit the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line 64686. I've got a bunch of them I want to include in our discussion between now and the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour. I want to. You wrote heavily about this off of the victory, the come from behind late dramatic win in Salt Lake City. It's the proverbial coach makes an in-game adjustment. In pretty much any sport, we think that's an important aspect of what a coach can do to maybe influence things, shade things a different way. You clearly felt that this was the occasion to go down that particular road with the Wild head coach. What did you see that he did that got your attention that you thought was so helpful?
Yeah, and look, sometimes it just happens, right? I mean, it's a hockey game, things happen, and it just happens to work sometimes, and you can't, at all times just say he just did the magic spell. But the reason why I wrote it the other night is because this has been a constant trend this year where he has recognized in games, whether it's because of injuries or poor performance or a sleepy performance, that at a point where he needs to make a move. Sometimes it's wholesale moves, like in Chicago, that at least got them a point. Sometimes it's just a little tweak. Sometimes it's because he loses a couple forwards and has to start doing things. The other night, Matt Boldy was clearly not going. And it wasn't just Matt Boldy's issue. The top line wasn't generating much. And with the injuries to Zuccarello and Eriksson Ek, when you look at the second to fourth lines, there's just not a lot of offensive talent there that's going to allow you to score. And even though they had a huge shot advantage, at some point it just felt like he had to do something to spark something. So in the second period, Kuzandinov scores the goal, and he comes right back out with Johansson on the right side of Kaprizov and Rossi. Johansson immediately lugs the puck up ice, pushes it ahead for Kaprizov, and Kaprizov scores the go-ahead goal. Then he doesn't do it again the rest of the period. But then at the beginning of the third period, Boldy takes a terrible penalty. They score to tie the game, and he did it again. And it was clearly to teach Boldy a lesson. And what happens again? Johansson now scores to immediately respond, and then the rest of the game they were together. So it just was a little switch that clearly in that point needed to be done. And he just seems to have that magic touch at times. What I also like about it is then you worry as a coach, and I'm only saying this isn't conjecture, it's because I shot the breeze with Hines about this this morning, is sometimes you worry as a coach now as Boldy the next couple of days, you want him thinking about it, but you also don't want him to be like, oh my God, I suck, or he's mad at me, or things like that. So he always, every single time, goes back to the original lines. One is he suspects that Matt Boldy is going to have a bounce-back game tonight. Two, he knows in the back of his mind that in his back pocket that he could always throw Johansson there again tonight if things go haywire. So I just like the in-game adjustments that he seems to make, and a lot of times they work. Now, is it because he's making the adjustments that it works? The other thing that he does that I've never heard a coach at least explain it this way before is when he sees a sleepy performance, he will make wholesale changes because he thinks it artificially wakes everybody up because now they've got to communicate, they've got to listen, figure out what lines are on, and it just naturally gets everybody's attention when he sees them playing flat. And he tried to do that a little bit in L.A., and it obviously didn't work that night. They worked hard, but they just didn't have it. So it doesn't always work, but it just seems to me that John has that recognition in games to try to make moves. And let's be honest, I mean, I'm not ripping on Dean, but we're coming off a coach that almost never made in-game changes. And so, and so I just think and every coach has its own style. Dean did a hell of a job here, but, this is just very different, and he seems to go to that well a lot. He double shifts Kirill, things like that. So it's just, I think it's a good tactical way of coaching, and he's made a lot of really quality moves this year.
Yeah, and like you said, they're not always going to work out, or it could be coincidence, as you say. But it is part of how I think that's where it's so many times. I think it's subtle stuff like that ends up. Those are my favorite kinds of coaches, because even if maybe they overcorrect, I'd rather one be that assertive and to try things rather than just sort of sit there and say, no, we're locked in. This is what we do, and they'll come out of it. We're going to make them come out of it. And I don't tend to appreciate that strategy. I like to see a little bit more aggressiveness.
Yeah, no, and I think he's done a really quality job. The other thing he's done here is that with Brodin, Eriksson, and no coach is going to change their system, but tactically, the last 3 games, he's clearly tweaked some stuff. And, with Eriksson out, Zuccarello out, and Brodin out, it's really wreaked havoc with their ability to get the puck up ice and things like that. So they've definitely changed their way that they're playing. They're not nearly as offensive. They're going low to high a lot more and just trying to put a volume of pucks on net. And that's why the other night they had a huge shot volume the other night, but they just weren't getting a ton of scoring chances. But it just seems like he doesn't sit around and wait. He tries to recognize things, spur the team along, and for a team that's again is points in 23 out of 28 games, it's time to start giving John a lot of credit for what's going on here. It's not just Gustafson's making all the saves and Kaprizov's playing out of his mind. This was a hard training camp. He got them clearly ready. They had to have a better start than they've had the last couple years, Dan, where the last, I always say, and coach, I'm sure I stole it from somewhere, but you can't make the playoffs early in the season, but you could surely miss it. The last 2 years, the Wild really missed the playoffs early in the season. And this year, when you looked at their schedule and the way it was built, they had a lot of days off. But when you play 10 of your first 15 on the road and you're only in town for 2 games in October and you're constantly in and out of town, they've had, this is the first time where it feels like we're going to establish a little bit of a home base here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
All of us that travel with the team, they had to implore these guys to take the start of the season seriously. And clearly, not only did they start incredibly, but that being on the road as much as they did bonded this team together, where they are just one tight-knit team right now. Obviously, winning helps that. It's always the chicken and the egg factor. What makes a close team? If you're losing, you're not going to be in sight. But clearly, they got the message to these guys through a very hard training camp, through a lot of meetings with Bill Guerin and John Hines, where they constantly impressed upon them the importance to the start of the season. And they got off to a great start, and they've just continued it. And they've continued it in the realm of a ton of injuries right now. And last year, as we all know, the injuries killed the team. They couldn't handle any adversity. And now it doesn't matter who's out of their lineup. And I say this before, they're going to have to play Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl without Eriksson and Brodin tonight. So, this could all sound foolish tomorrow. But it doesn't matter whoever's out of the lineup. They seem to call up guys from Iowa, and they fill in the roles, and they move guys up in the lineup, and they feel they're doing their job, and they're winning games now with a second line of Harton, Foligno, and Johansson. That is something that probably would have killed them last year, and it's been the opposite so far this year. I mean, their third line right now is Lauko, Goudreau, and Trennan. So it's very hard to generate offense right now with this team. Yet they're figured out without Eriksson, coupled with Brodin on this road trip, to get 4 out of 6 points.
Where are we on the injuries?
Brodin and Zuccarello skated today. They were buzzing around really good. I was really watching Broads because, I know what his injury is, and it's a concern. But clearly, clearly whatever he took for his injuries to, try to, at least right now, offset surgery is working. I think they're going to still be careful with him. They're not going to probably have a full practice tomorrow, but they'll have the guys down there. They have back-to-back games this weekend. I don't know if that's too soon to get at least one or two of the guys back in the lineup.
Russo?
And that, so we'll see. They'll take Monday off, and they have a practice Tuesday, and then they play Wednesday against Florida. Maybe Wednesday makes the most sense for both of them, but maybe we'll get a better idea tomorrow.
So this is a start of a 5-game homestand, right? To your point about finally home base a little bit, which is nice. So there's been a lot of talk about Kaprizov and MVP conversation. He's clearly in the mix of this thing. Do you consider him the front runner at this point? I mean, I know to a certain extent it's meaningless. We're sitting here in December, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's the front runner just from the standpoint of how many writers, and again, writers are the ones that matter because we're the ones that vote. How many writers picked the Wild to miss the playoffs? I mean, I saw people at The Athletic. We have 40 hockey writers, and the Wild were picked like 7th in the 18th division by some people, which even at the time, I'm like, this is idiotic. So if you're a writer that thought the Wild were going to finish 7th in division and the Wild make the playoffs and, Kaprizov's got 130 points, I think you'd be foolish not to pick him. But to your point, there's a lot of guys having great seasons right now. Kucherov's been unbelievable. Dreisaitl's been unbelievable. Reinhart's been unbelievable. The team that I've watched a lot lately that has been great, that might not at the end of the day have the points that these guys will have at the end of the year, but he has to me been one of the best two-way forwards in the league, is Jack Eichel. I've watched a lot of Vegas, and he has been awesome. So he's going to have a lot of competition. But Kaprizov, he's just been so clutch. He's factored in on 10 of their game-winning goals, whether it's assists or the goal. The overtime winners, everything. I mean, he's just been fabulous. And I asked him in Anaheim how he never likes to talk about himself, but I asked him how proud of the consistency that he's playing with, and he goes, and he basically in his own broken English, he said, "What I love is how much as a team we're playing, but loving coming to the rink together." And as a Wild fan, that should be really refreshing that he is just having a ball right now with his teammates, believes this team can win.
Russo? Hello? It's like we lost him.
Think Fallness jammed up his phone?
It wouldn't shock me at all. He gets so cranky. We didn't talk enough Wild between 3 and 4 o'clock. Wouldn't shock me if that's the case. Let's see if we can get some Russo back, because we got a little bit more time. If you have questions, the usual place, KFAN, the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is 64686, because I have plenty more to get to, and I've got a couple of good texts as well I would like to include in our discussion. Vikings programming takes over at 6. Is it Censors tonight? Vikings from Joe Censors?
Minnesota Vikings podcast.
Oh, it's a podcast in the tailgate. That's right. And then Wild is a 7:30 start tonight. Russo reminds us with all the action on our flagship. We are aware that the iHeart app is down right now. If you're trying to listen to us that way, clearly you don't know that. I'm trying to text people because I'm getting frantic texts from people bitter. They think this is part of our anti-hockey conspiracy to not make Russo available on purpose via the app because we're trying to punish hockey fans who were complaining earlier that we didn't talk enough hockey on a game day, even though we're talking hockey in a game day with Russo Radio.
And he's back on line 7 now.
Oh, we got him? Okay, fair enough. We lost you there in the middle of the diatribe. But I think
can you hear me all right?
Yeah, now we got you. Yeah, we got you loud and clear now. It was dead air all of a sudden. I think there might be some Fallness, some subterfuge here from Fallness. It wouldn't surprise me.
Well, he's got all those satellite dishes right in front, and I drove right in front of the arena, so it's probably there's no doubt this was Fallness.
Could be that.
Fallness, everything is. But yeah, what I was just saying is, and I don't know where I lost you, is that when I was talking to Kaprizov in Anaheim, he just went on and on about just how much he's enjoying coming to the rink and seeing the team winning and all that stuff. And I think that's a refreshing thing that Wild fans need to know because, we've had so much worry about what's going to happen after July 1 and whether or not he's going to sign up for 8 more years here. And the fact that he just loves playing here right now, loves the way he's playing. He's showing it. The other thing for me is that I've always been worried that his contract ends at the same time Zuccarello's contract ends. And I think what this state of him continuing to be dominant without Zuccarello is even showing him is that he's not dependent on Zuccarello always putting the puck on a platter for him. So I think that's all really refreshing stuff for believing, that he is going to sign up here for 8 more years when the Wild offer him, $120 million plus on July 1 next year.
What's the most? Is there a max we can give him by the way the CBA is set up?
Well, the CBA, it really, so you can get up to 20% of the cap, technically.
All right.
The problem is that we don't know what the cap's going to be in 2 years when he is an unrestricted free agent. So it'd be 20% of, say, 90, let's just say it's 98.
You can do the math. We don't do math well on this show.
Yeah. And the other really situation here that Craig Leopold talked about the other day to my colleague Chris Johnston and Pierre LeBrun down at the Board of Governors meetings is that if the CBA gets done by, say, the Stanley Cup final, there could very well be a phase-in period where the cap that right now would be 92.5 next year is actually going to skyrocket. And in a couple years, it's just going to continue to climb and climb and climb. So, the other real issue here that's going to make things problematic for both Paul Theophanous and Bill Guerin and Matt Sells when they're negotiating this contract is if you don't know what the cap is, if you don't know if the cap's $110 million, well, now he's going to want a lot more than $14, $15 million.
Sure.
So that is going to make things pretty problematic because we might not even know until, June if the CBA is going to be done and they're going to have in this phase-in period, and then they can start guesstimating what the cap will be in 2 years when both Connor McDavid and Kirill Kaprizov are up. So it's going to be really interesting watching that.
What is literally the earliest he could be signed in theory?
July 1.
July 1.
You can talk now.
Okay.
Yeah, they're allowed to talk, and they have a really good relationship right now, and it has not always been that way between Paul Theophanous and the Wild. Obviously the last couple, it's been a chore getting him signed, especially his last contract. I'm sure now in hindsight, Bill Guerin wishes he did the 8 years and not the 5. Now, Paul was on the road when we were in early November when we were out there in San Jose and Anaheim. I saw Bill Guerin and him chumming it up a couple times. So that's all real positive things. As I mentioned the day before the season, Theophanous was in town, met with Matt Sells and Bill Guerin. So just the fact they're having dialogue now, the fact that Kirill Kaprizov is so clearly joyous right now, the way that things are going, I think all that's really positive.
Not to be Danny Downer here, but explain to me, the Wild's penalty kill, I think, has still been pretty bad. So
yeah.
How do we explain the gaudy record? How have they survived what we all assume is a pretty important specialty, or are we on borrowed time if that doesn't get better?
Well, they're 100% on borrowed time. Maybe not necessarily in the regular season, but you're not winning a playoff round with a 70% base penalty kill. I mean, it's just not happening. And the Wild have to fix this. And I asked John Hines point blank today, is it time to get Bogosian off the power play and put Spurgeon back on?
Ooh.
I get why they're not using Spurge, but Bogosian's been on the ice for 8 of the last 10 goals. Obviously not having Brodin out hurts right now. I think they're going to mess with whether we see Spurgeon right away tonight, I think they're going to definitely mix up. We might not see Middleton and Faber tonight. We might see Middleton and Bogosian and Merrill in Faber. But the other night, you don't need to watch video to figure out what was wrong there. Merrill, you got the best shooter in the league from that circle. One time, shooting there in Clayton Keller, and Merrill's not fronting him. I mean, you got to front him, and then at least Gustafsson knows that if shot gets by, it's going to be short side. And he just wasn't doing it. So you don't need video. You don't need to play the game to kind of figure that stuff out. But the other stuff that tactically, we're looking at the end when the goal goes in, what the problem is. They are not happy with their neutral zone forecheck right now. And really creating havoc in the neutral zone. They just feel like they're backing off and letting teams into the zone, which once you get, it doesn't matter what team you're playing. Once you get $50-60 million worth of players on the ice on a power play, they're going to outman a penalty kill most of the time and get their scoring chances. And then you just got to figure out a way to stop it. So that's a problem. And they've just been way too lackadaisical back there. I think you naturally, when you're giving up a lot of goals, sag and get into bad habits. So, John went on a I asked him about the PK today. He gave probably a 2-minute answer about it because he said he spent literally 5 hours watching video the last couple of days of their penalty kill and trying to figure out where the issues lie. And he feels like they're just getting way too passive back there, not being aggressive. So, the reason why their record has been as good as it is without it is because they've been the most disciplined team in the league. Luckily for them, they're only taking 2 or 3 penalties a night, so they're not putting themselves in a position out there. If they were out taking 6, 7 penalties a night, oh my God, where this team would be. And so that was the problem last year. They fixed that, but they've got to figure this out by the time the playoffs start. And that's why I think the Wild would love to stay out of LTI, figure out a way to get a top 6 forward that could also kill penalties. Hinton, Brock Nelson, something like that. The other thing without Eriksson Ek now is they're usually losing the draw right away. He's obviously first over the boards. So there's a lot of issues going on. But they've got to figure this out, because if they don't figure this out by the playoffs, they're going to play Dallas, Colorado, or Winnipeg probably in the first round the way the NHL is set up. It doesn't matter how good they are this season in the regular season. These are going to be their opponents in the first round, and we've seen it before. That Dallas just lights them up, and they've got to fix it.
Is Connor McDavid still really, really good?
He's still really, really good, and he's going to probably be really, really good when he doesn't have to look Jonas Brodin in the eye every shift tonight. And, Connor McDavid, I believe in the last 5 or 6 years, the Wild have held him to the lowest of his points per game of any of the 31 opponents that he plays. And a lot of it is because he gets a heavy dose of Jonas Brodin every single night. I was listening to Alex Stalock on the radio this morning, and Alex obviously played there, and he said that Jonas makes Connor very, very frustrated because he's one of the rare defensemen in the league that could skate with him, put him into uncomfortable positions on the ice, sort of push him toward the wall in areas where he's not nearly as dangerous. And so Declan Chisholm can skate, but he's not Jonas Brodin. And Jake Middleton can skate, but he's not Jonas Brodin. So tonight's going to be very tough. And so, and then you add Eriksson Ek, their best checking center, who's always out there against Connor McDavid and Draisaitl. Tonight's going to be a tough game, but the Wild usually figure out a way to beat Edmonton. Edmonton hasn't won here in, several years. So we'll see what happens tonight, but there's a reason why the Oilers are a favorite in the Wild's home building tonight.
What's a better nickname for a professional hockey team in Minnesota, the Wild or the Northern Lights?
I don't know. I like the Northern Lights.
I kind of do.
I kind of do. That was one of the options in 2000. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm on this kick. I mean, it's years, how long they've been around. It came up yesterday, the day before, and I said, I was kind of musing. I've never been really captivated by the nickname all that much. And then we went back to, okay, it could have been, I kind of like, and that's long, and I don't know what you shorten it to, but I kind of like Northern Lights. Probably too late for a change, you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't mind the Wild nearly as much since I switched from the Strib to the Athletic. At the Strib, we had to consider them, singular.
Singular,
so
yeah.
Is and it.
Yes, yes.
Actually, it was funny when I moved to the Athletic and we made them what they are, a collective noun, and we were allowed to now call them they and our and stuff like that. I actually had trouble getting out of the habit. But
I remember that.
The Wild don't bother me as much now as it used to. But I like the Northern Lights, and maybe that would appease those North Star people that just can't get over that this isn't the North Stars. At least they get Northern.
Yeah, you get at least you get that piece of it. Well, what I'm going to do is next time, I always like trying to get Guerin going. Last time I got him going with some analytics that were not all that kind to the Wild despite their record. Expected goals, and he almost lost his mind. He started swearing. So the next time, that's what I'm going to do. And say, this is kind of bugging me, Bill. I know it may be above your pay grade, but you're pretty influential. Any chance the team's name could be changed from Wild to Northern Lights, and just see how he reacts?
I think he'd love it.
Hell, he might actually.
He doesn't like Billy doesn't have enough on his plate. Now he's going to have him go into Max's office. Hey, I got a great idea for you.
That's it. That's it exactly. All right, have fun tonight. Happy holidays, and we'll probably chat next week before we take some days off.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Be good. That is Russo Radio. Wild back in action tonight, right here on the Fan. Late start tonight, 7:30 rather than the usual 7:10. And the Edmonton Oilers, of course, are the opponent. Shall we pause here, bottom of the hour?
Got a couple breaks to get in before 6.
We're going to get them all in and wrap things up at the top. They were called the Northern Lights when they're playing hot now. You could call them the Northern Highlights. Get it? The Northern Highlights. By the way, Northern Lights is a strain of cannabis. Is that true?
Yeah, probably.
With the state of Minnesota's recent handling of the legalization rollout, I'm not sure we deserve the honor of the moniker. I hate to say it because I would love to have a giant spliff as a mascot. I did not know Northern Lights was a strain of cannabis.
We got a lot to learn.
Sauce know that? He would confirm it, right? Yeah, he's got his thumbs up. He would
Thumbs
know.
up.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
It's also a casino in Walker, Minnesota.
Is it really?
Northern Lights Casino, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's not surprising. I mean, and some people think it's a little, the term would be a little trite, I guess, to a certain extent, and maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know.
Do you still wish that it was the Minnesota Polars for the Timberwolves? Wasn't that one of the
Polars was one of them? Yeah, Harv and Marv. I remember that was one. I was on their list. And what was the other? Was it down to Polars and Timberwolves, or was it?
I don't know if those were the final two, but we had some finalists.
Yeah,
Timberwolves is good.
Timberwolves, I
like Timberwolves.
I came to like. I didn't in the beginning think it was terrific. When we have more time tomorrow, we probably. Well, we got a busy show tomorrow too, but did you see it is remarkable. We've got another Minnesota fraud case.
I did see this. Yeah, the headline
just emerging. There's stories about it, certainly in the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. The FBI is searching at least 2 Minnesota autism centers this morning as part of an investigation that it said revealed substantial evidence of fraudulent Medicaid claims made by many companies participating in a state program to serve people under 21 years old. Agents were searching at least 2 locations as of this morning, according to a 54-page search warrant application. Smart Therapy Center's business office in Minneapolis and Star Autism Center's office in St. Cloud. A Star Tribune reporter observed FBI agents in the hallway of Smart Therapy Center's office early this morning, early Thursday morning. Searches are in connection with an investigation into fraud related to the state-funded, another one, Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention, EIDBI, healthcare program that serves people under 21 with autism spectrum disorder. Smart Therapy received about $13.8 million in Medicaid reimbursements between 2020 and 24 to provide such services, EIDBI-related services, the warrant states. Star Autism has received more than $6 million since it was formed in 2020. Now, this is peanuts compared to Feeding Our Future fraud, which was approaching, wasn't it like $500 million?
Yeah.
Or 250, I don't know.
It was like 250,
It was ridiculous. 250, and I think there was even perhaps more coming. Our guy, Andy Luger, was on with Chad Hartman today, and the quote from Luger, the U.S. attorney, by the way, he's on his way out because there's been obviously a change at the White House level. Here's the direct quote. Minnesota has a fraud problem. That boils it down pretty well. And it's just, you do sort of shake your head and go, look, there's always fraud that you have to follow. We're not the only state that deals with it.
Yeah, we're pretty forgiving, though, it appears.
We're number one with I think in the country right now with a bullet.
We take a lot of people's word for it.
I mean,
apparently.
Because Feeding Our Future, that included a lot of COVID money, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where this money's coming from. And again, this seems small potatoes, but we're still in the millions here. It's, Luger's involved. He's got his fingerprints on this case as well. FBI is involved in this one, and it's not a good look, boys and girls. It is part of what I think ultimately makes many people distrustful of, we'll just let the government handle it, you know? We're apparently, regardless of the intentions we have to get money to the right places, if they're not getting to the right places, we got a problem, right? If people are getting rich, individuals or groups are getting rich over all this money that is being passed along rather freely, that's nothing to be proud of. That's something to be embarrassed by. And I think, again, we've said it before, on any of these other cases, Did a single person lose his job or her job? I don't think so. And because you can do the old bit, well, whose fault is it really? It's kind of difficult to figure that out. But at the end of the day, I mean, we sure as hell know who loses a job when the football team doesn't do very well or the basketball team doesn't do very well, right? Somebody's the fall guy.
There's
it's often the head
accountability.
coach.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe it's too knee-jerk, but it's more to come on this as the story develops. But it did catch my eye, and it's almost like we need a hashtag or we need a gate term that encompasses all of this fraud, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, that have just been literally thrown down the toilet, grabbed by people with ill intent, and has not come close to being handed to the people who you're trying to help in any of these cases. Now, this case isn't adjudicated yet. There's a lot of open questions, but anything that Luger has been involved in, he's got a pretty good conviction record in that regard. And so the details to this point that we know that are out there are rather damning in this case too.
There's got to be a way to play off one Minnesota. I'm going to have to think about that. Oh,
that's it. Maybe it's you might have to be a one Minnesota thing.
There's got to be a one Minnesota angle to
Apparently
make a catchy name.
There's a lot of detail in the 54-page search warrant application. Maybe I'll try to do some studying on that tonight or overnight into tomorrow, even though tomorrow is, of course, the Friday Football Beast. Although, should it be less beast-like because the Vikings aren't playing until Monday?
Well, we're moving one of the beasts on the Beast.
That's true, you're right.
Ben Gessling is going to join Monday from the People's Stadium.
Is that official?
That's official. That's confirmed.
Is he okay with that?
He's great with it.
Okay,
He
so
likes the
I don't want
idea
to hurt
of
anybody's feelings.
Boots on the ground.
On the day of, I think it all works.
Exactly right. So Gessling will be moved.
Guess what? That's going to be another short show for us. 5 o'clock we're on it.
I'm going to show up about 2:50.
Oh, my God. Why? Well, there's no need.
Roll the ball out and play.
But we are doing predictions tomorrow?
We are doing picks.
We're going to go and do picks.
They might be moved to a different time.
Yes, because we're working on a couple things there.
Because Nordo's helping us at Army Navy.
Yeah.
I heard you talking about it with Mace yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not Mace from Army Navy. He's going to be at the Irish bar looking for women.
Mace will be operating before the Army Navy game. There's no question.
Trying to get his Bumble app up and running while he's in Washington, D.C.
Is that what they call it? Is that what it is, the Bumble? Is that a way to
There's one
to
of them.
latch
There's
up?
Tinder. There's Hinge, I think.
Tinder's the swipe one?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My guess is he's already been on that but doesn't want to admit it. Right? Don't you think? It's likely?
Wrong.
You're wrong.
You're
Yeah.
wrong.
Fact or fiction?
I wouldn't do that. You're wrong.
Fact or fiction?
Join the Power Trips Meat Sauce. Saturday is the grand opening of Planet Fitness's new location in Edina. Stop by from 9:30 to 11:30. Check out the new location. Register for great prizes, including free 1-year Black Card membership and KFAN swag. Full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar. The show wrap brought to you by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washers since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper show wrap.
Where are we in your continued intensified efforts to land for this show on Monday night, Troy Aikman?
Do you know how many times I have tried to get Troy Aikman?
How about Buck?
Buck seems more likely.
I'd take either one of them.
Buck is great. I love Buck.
Not according to Vikings fans. They still hate him.
I think we've softened.
You think they've gone past that?
If they haven't, it's their problem.
By the way, I thought I read earlier today, I meant to get to it when the story broke, but I think we were chatting with one of our outstanding guests tonight, Randy Moss, announcing that he's going live on his Insta
tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, it's
presumably 4 or 5. to try to clear up any mystery about what challenges he is indeed battling at this point. So that could end up being a story that we will be covering during the Friday Football Beast, depending on how that goes, or if he indeed follows through on that. Yeah, Aikman's impossible to get, I think, isn't he?
He has been for me.
He's got a deal with, I think, a Dallas with, either the Beast or the ticket or one of them, the sports animal in Dallas, one of them. So I think he's on regularly, and he's good. He's outstanding.
He's great.
But I just, I don't want to give up the ghost completely. I mean, you got a lot of connections, I thought. Maybe not that many with the ESPN crew. You think Seifert could help us?
He might be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I
He
don't know
might
if
be able to have a name that we don't have. Maybe I'll try him, or maybe you can try him in that regard. Be a nice add, little bonus, wouldn't it?
Troy Aikman, yeah, be more than a bonus.
But I would take Buck too, like you said.
Yeah,
because they're here. I think they're doing our game.
They
if I'm
are.
not mistaken, right?
They don't
Because there's
they don't
two
wanna miss
games
it.
that night for sure. Sean Salisbury joined us between 3:30. Well, we're closer to 3:40 and 4 o'clock today. And I'm wondering if you believe that Salisbury, very opinionated, one of the reasons we love having him on, made any inroads with the, what are you idiots doing even speculating on the possibility of Sam Darnold coming back, or that the Vikings might be interested in pursuing the notion of Sam Darnold coming back next year? Do you think he turned any heads with that group? Because among the texts I got while we had him on, one person said, I'm leaving for another station. Goodbye.
Really?
Bitter that there this conversation that we shouldn't, that on a sports talk show in Minnesota, there's almost something sacrilegious about even entertaining it, even talking about it. Do you think, because I thought Salisbury was pretty good, raised a lot of good points, and the thing I love the most about what Salisbury said is, screw the propriety thing of you being fair to the player if you franchise him. Is it legal to franchise him? Yes, it is.
It's in the rules.
And as he said, look, let's be honest about this. I'm paraphrasing him. He told us in the beginning of the season, I got to give him credit, Sam Darnold, according to the people he talked to, can still play, that he had a chance to be pretty damn successful here, and that's happened. But even Salisbury says, but at best, it's one good year. So a team would have every right to say, yeah, you know what? We would be willing to entertain the possibility of franchising you and spending the, what do we say, $40 million for the 1 year.
Right, 41 mil is the estimate.
To find out whether this is as real as we want to think that it is. I don't think you're injuring the player. I don't think you have to apologize to the player. It might annoy his agent. Probably would. But you've said it before, it's show business, it's not show friends.
It is not show friends.
To a certain extent, you can also say, hey, we resurrected it, man. If you buy the notion that the quarterback whisperer is as important to this whole process as people think, then that's part of the reason it worked, that we took you, that we were the ones who groomed you and extracted the best out of what you have to offer.
The more I think about it, the more I think that is going to be the play. Or it should be the play.
I think
if he continues,
I would
obviously.
say more should be. I'm still not convinced the Vikings will, but I think it, again, as you said, we talked about this with Sean. You got some good opponents coming up after the Bears, right? Let's see where it goes. Maybe he reverts, and it's easy, although you said you wouldn't want to necessarily dismiss it as a possibility, but it might be easier to stick with the original plan.
Right.
But if he continues to play at a high level, I think you'd be foolish to not put it in the mix and consider it, and that means all options on the table, including, because the beauty of franchising is then you're not doing a 4-year.
It's just another year.
Kirk Cousins like $200 million deal. Correct?
And then you're not worried about rushing JJ back off the injury. It could work out really well.
Yeah, well, we'll see
if they can do it financially.
So tomorrow, picks with Gerby. Is that correct?
Yes. Lavelle
E. Neal III, and we hope Ron Rivera,
former NFL coach.
Yes, who is apparently visiting among the dignitaries who are attending Army-Navy weekend, not named Glenn Mason.
Right.
And so it might be good to catch up with Rivera. There's one other possibility. We haven't heard yet on that. We'll keep you posted. And then Gessling will join on game day from the People's Stadium.
Monday at 4:30.
Monday at 4:30.
Yeah, final segment that day for the attendance takers.
Oh, that's right. We're again out at 5 o'clock.
Will the sun still be up? Probably not.
I don't know. Are they still getting shorter?
I thought they're starting to get a little longer.
I know. I thought it was the 21st they start getting longer.
Well, then why'd you ask me?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know it. That's what my... Does Sauce know? Is he in there still?
Sauce left. He went to his appearance.
Oh, he went to his appearance.
He had his Jimmy Johns and left.
Music now, because it's time for the Vikings podcast when we wrap things up. And don't forget, right here on The Fan tonight, Minnesota Wild hockey opening face-off scheduled for 7:30 from the X. We got all the action, not only on FM 100.3 The Fan, but the iHeartRadio app, which I think is headed in a healthier direction. Talk to you tomorrow at 3.